to that. But as of right now, the little that we know is that the top tier membership will cost $500,000. You know what you could get for that? You could be a member at Gold's Gym for like 700 years. Instead, you just get access to this club. And it's gonna be capped at 200, and apparently the demand has already exceeded that. And you know what? I'm gonna say, I accept that. I don't doubt that at all. I mean, after all, the point is you're a billionaire, you're for a national or whatever, you give $500,000 to the son of the president to be able to schmooze with him. That's access, that's power, that's worth something. It's also, by the way, petty corruption. I mean, Hunter Biden, you'll recall, there was years of theories about the fact that he might have gotten a job because people wanted access to Joe Biden. He might have had a call with Joe Biden or something. They're gonna write a check for $500,000 to Don Jr. Obviously not because they want the green tea shooters or whatever, if they keep those on the menu, but because they want influence over the Trumps. And this is all legal. Again, as I always say, campaign finance laws have nothing to do with this. You could just do that. They could charge next year $1 million. They could charge $10 million. And there are definitely enough Saudis and Qataris or whatever that'll write those checks because that's how corruption works. And they call this right-wing populism. They call this anti-elite as they're doing this. I call it something different. Now, we don't know what it's gonna look like inside. They say they brought in $10 million worth of art. Of course, it's Don Jr. that's choosing it. I'm assuming that it's $10 million of the most tasteless art imaginable. We'll see. There's lounge spaces, a VIP section. By the way, this is how terminally messed up these people are. It costs $500,000 to go to this place. And even inside of that, there's a VIP section. It never ends for these people. The need to stratify down into smaller and smaller sections. That, by the way, is literally, this is for my Frasier heads, that is literally the plot point of an episode of Frasier, that they pay to get into a private club and it has a room that they're not allowed into. That's what they're acting out in DC right now. But don't worry, they're just like you and me. Isn't it good that we have representatives of the everyman in the White House these days? Anyway, that's all the time we have for the show. We've got some awesome stories on the docket for tomorrow with Brett. My garbage person is a true piece of garbage. I can't wait to see Brett make fun of him. So definitely stick around for that. Also, go to the post tab. You can vote for the garbage person as well as the hero of the week. And as I said, check out the special content that we've been putting on the channel a couple times a week for those of you who just watch live. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.
Welcome. It's indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Ritchie. Good to be with you. We have a lot on the agenda to cover today. Stick and stay. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either. All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. On the program, we have none other than Mr. Elliott Morgan, helping break down news of the day with me. Contributor all-star. Fascinating to have his analysis as always. Top story of the day. What if I told you a cop fatally shoots an abuse victim who's fleeing her abuser? Here it is.
Oh, 1584, 1584. 1584, he's trying to hit someone. Shots fired, shots fired. Get back. Shots fired. I got about 4 subjects running around. He was trying to run over a subject. Get out of the road.
He's a damn lie. Put it up full mass. No one was threatening him. Nobody attempted to run over him. And as you can clearly see in the video footage, the vehicle was nowhere near him, nor was it coming toward him. He lied in the police report. He lied in his initial commentary. He lied to the witnesses who saw exactly what happened. November 2023, I'm taking you to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne police responded to a domestic abuse call at a home where they had previously responded multiple times over domestic violence calls. Ms. Deshana Warren Hill was actually driving away from the man who was actively engaged in physical abuse when she was shot and killed by the Indiana police officer in 2023. The officer is Mark Guzman of the Fort Wayne Police Department, claimed that he was in fear for his life when he opened fire, claiming she was driving the car directly toward him. Let's put up a screenshot. That's when he shot this woman. The car is driving away. The body cam footage, which was released 3 months later, shows Guzman was not directly in the car's path because she was driving away when he opened fire. He decided to commit murder. That would be murder in any other scenario. A car driving away and you shoot at it and kill the person driving. Last week, her mother, Denisha Warren, filed a lawsuit in federal court against Officer Guzman, as well as the department's former police chief and the man who was abusing her. His name is Cedric Brown. Quote, "The Fort Wayne Police Department is out of control," she says. Warren said during a protest last year, during that protest, according to the Journal Gazette, without any attempt to use less lethal weapons to subdue the descendant. Ms. Warren Hill defended Officer Mark A. Guzman, drew his service firearm, fired multiple gunshots into the vehicle being driven by the deceased. Now, you would imagine this is a horrible situation. This woman is in the middle of being abused. She calls for help. Help comes. She's fleeing the abuser to only be shot and killed by the very police that is supposed to help her survive. You would imagine charges will be filed. You would imagine this cop has to be prosecuted. He lied on the police report. It's clear that he shot a vehicle that was driving away from him, and he did so indiscriminately. You would be wrong. And while the body camera clearly shows, Warren Hill was driving away from her abuser. The cop, Fort Wayne police, tried to justify it by saying in a press release that a 911 caller told dispatcher, quote, the vehicle was attempting to run over the officer that had arrived on the scene, end quote. See, Guzman was cleared of wrongdoing 3 months after the shooting by the Allen County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, which stated in the press release that, quote, the officer was justified in using force as he reasonably believed that force was necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death to himself and or citizens of this community. That is how they covered this. So 2 callers described a chaotic scene involving people fighting outside the home, including a male who kept ramming his car into the house and garage, as well as trying to run over other people. When Guzman arrived, he spotted a man running away from a car that was driving forward, making it appear as if the car was trying to run the man over. However, the man stepped out of the way and the car continued driving forward toward the street while Guzman stood off several yards to the driver's side of the car, nowhere near his path or direction. Nevertheless, he still fired 6 bullets into that car, killing that woman who was already in the midst of running for her life, killing the 20-year-old woman who was trying to escape her abuser. According to the claim, it took 3 months after the shooting for police to release the body cam video, and they only did so after the cop was cleared of wrongdoing by the Attorney General's office. Now, this is one of those cases, you give it to a grand jury, at least let a grand jury hear the information, true bill or not, you give it to a grand jury. Grand jury likely, if you present it correctly, they indict here. They indict. Hell, they may indict for negligent homicide, but they indict for something. They indict. You then go to your normative jury, and all of the information comes out. The information like, well, he lied on the police report. You see, lying on the police report is a big deal. Here's why, especially when somebody's dead. It goes to evidence of a guilty conscience, meaning you knew what you did was wrong, illegal, unethical, immoral, so much so that on the official report, you told the narrative the way it should be told in order to alleviate criminal responsibility, which means you knew what you did was in fact criminal. That's what that means. But when you hide it in an AG's office and then you cloak it under the disguise of in fear of the lives of other people, this is what you have. All right. Elliott, dear brother, I know sometimes cops get it wrong authentically. To me, a cop who is a trained individual shooting at a car that's clearly moving away from him and then lying on the report saying he was afraid that it was going to hit him and that's the reason he decided to kill this woman is insane to me. What say you?
I would agree. I think, who among us hasn't been just gripped by fear at the sight of a car driving away from you? Clearly in the body cam footage, I've heard of fight or flight. I think this is fighting, just flying. This person was leaving. And in terms of this sort of reasonable belief excuse that they threw out, I think the question to ask, or a question, is what is going on in the training of becoming a police officer where that is a reasonable belief. And I think that this whole story is a great example of how police just are not equipped to be dealing with a lot of these types of calls that they get called in for. They're trained to see enemies where they're not, and then tragedies like this happen, and then you watch this whole rigmarole repeat itself where they investigate themselves and find no wrongdoing. And it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, and we will bring you updates as updates develop. This lawsuit has been filed, which means that individuals may go on record and also have to submit to sworn testimony. Okay. Well, hell of a thing. Conservative Prager U benefiting financially from Donald Trump's PBS cut. Of course they are. Here it is.
So we all knew this day was coming. It is officially here. Today, the White House has announced that they are partnering with Prager University and considering replacing PBS with Prager University children's content. This is a screenshot from the lesson on slavery. This is Frederick Douglass saying, "I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise." This is from their lesson on Christopher Columbus. And if you Google Dennis Prager himself, most likely this will come up where he actually said this loud, that there's no secular argument against adult incest.
So the federal government has defunded PBS, and guess who the White House is cozying up to instead? Prager U. And hate to be the bearer of bad news, but their videos may already be in your kid's classroom. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting announced that it's shutting down after Congress yanked over $500 million in federal funding, which means PBS and NPR are in trouble. Meanwhile, at a White House event, Linda McMahon rolled out a new education partner, Prager U. This is a conservative content group that makes short form videos that are climate denialist, Islamophobic, and misleading about slavery, among other things.
I can't believe they cut funding to PBS Kids for this Prager U
Yeah, but what about slavery? You didn't deny that.
Deny? No. Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the...
Slavery is better than death. They're going to put state propaganda to kids about this bull. They continue to try to diminish what they did during slavery. Slavery and indentured servitude are two totally different things.
Slavery is better than death. Well, they killed slaves too. So there's that part. Put it at full mass. Here we go. In July, Trump asked lawmakers to rescind roughly $1.1 billion from Corporation for Public Broadcast. One organization is said to benefit from Trump's, let's call it cut, conservative outlet Prager U. So Dennis Prager has admitted his goal is to, quote, indoctrinate children with right-wing ideology. The organization, which has faced backlash for downplaying racism, downplaying racist atrocities like slavery and the slaughter of indigenous people, they have not hidden their desire to overtake PBS as a provider of children's content. Quote, arming parents and educators with pro-America content they are craving. We are going toe-to-toe with massive youth media companies like PBS Kids and Disney, Prager U said in its 2022 annual report. So what is Prager U doing? Well, they are a propaganda machine. They are providing propaganda that is significantly misleading, but disguised as historical context. Now, why do they want to do this? Well, in order for them to not be judged for their atrocities that they've committed today, in order for them to not be judged for the economic, educational atrocities of policies they have championed today, they must lie to their children about who they are. They must lie to their children about what America is. And this lie has to be so persuasive that even the very historical foundation of America must be manipulated for the lie to work. And that is what they're doing. So now Prager U has entered into a partnership. Prager U has already entered partnerships with states to produce educational material. Oklahoma's far-right school superintendent, Ryan Walters, even announced this month that his state will use a new ideology test from Prager U for certification of teachers who come from states with what he called progressive education policies. Something he said is necessary to protect students from radical leftist ideology. So if your state happens to have a Democratic governor, or maybe if you happen to be just black, there's a special test that you have to take to ensure that you are a team player. There's more. The Trump administration has partnered with the platform on a, quote, Founders Museum. This is an exhibit in the White House for visitors as tech outlet 404 Media explained. The attraction comes complete with digital assets like this AI sloppified version of John Adams, who was made to regurgitate a saying popularized by right-wing influencer and Prager U contributor Ben Shapiro. As 404 noted, the White House videos conclude with a disclaimer that says, quote, this partnership does not constitute or imply U.S. government or U.S. Department of Education endorsement of Prager U. TYT's hold
Brett Early, shared an interesting theory on why Trump is going after PBS during his garbage person of the week on the Damage Report. Here it is.
Brett, who is your garbage person of the week?
Well, let me tell you. We may now know exactly why Donald Trump is targeting for cancellation one of the most beloved mainstays of American culture. And like so many grudges he keeps, it turns out it's wildly personal. And his skin just wasn't thick enough to take a joke. Who am I talking about? Well, let's look at this tweet. Donald Trump, I guess on True Social, says, "It is very important that all Republicans adhere to my rescission bill, and in particular defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS and NPR, which is worse than CNN and MSDNC together." I will explain in a second why he's targeting them. He says any Republican that votes to allow this monstrosity known as Sesame Street to continue broadcasting will not have my support or endorsement. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This guy hates Sesame Street so much. A bill to cancel $1.1 billion over 2 years for PBS, NPR, and its affiliates has passed the House and has to be voted on by July 18th in order to pass. So they've got about a week to do it. And Donald Trump says NPR and PBS are a radical left disaster, 1000% against the Republican Party. Now, why is he garbage? Because this is an insanely personal grudge he has against literally Sesame Street. That's right. The beloved Muppets got under his skin with this. A couple times on Sesame Street. This is episode 2399, which I believe is from I want to say like 2005. They had the character Donald Grump.
Donald Grump. He's too petty to laugh at himself. He's too small to be okay with a joke here and there at his expense. So this man is literally transforming federal or national public education material, vendors, contractors, because he didn't like a joke told on Sesame Street. There you have it. Your president of the United States making America great again. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
I mean, I grew up with a lot of these talking points that Prager U likes to animate with their adorable cartoons constantly. So I think one of the reasons that they're so gung-ho for this is because it is highly effective. I mean, I remember growing up and reading about how enslaved people actually liked it. And all of these tropes that they kind of wheel out whenever something like this is happening. It's kind of shocking that they haven't come out with like new, different talking points at this point. But I guess, hey, if it works, why fix it? But the only reason I don't buy into a lot of this stuff anymore is A, because I was curious enough to find new sources, and B, was economically privileged enough to be able to do so. So I think when you have something like PBS getting defunded, it's going to have a ripple effect, especially in rural areas where they do not have access to these perspectives and they don't have access to actual scholarship that's going on historically. And it's working. I mean, the whole Project 2025 thing is just going gangbusters for these folks. And I didn't expect it to be so quick. And it is a little sad, and I hope somebody puts a stop to it. But hopefully people can start getting curious and reach out independently to different sources, because they are out there. And I hate the idea that we're going to have a generation of kids who are going to grow up with this sort of milquetoast whitewashed version of history because the people in charge don't want to get their feelings hurt.
Yep, and that's why we have to do more in order to make sure that these independent opportunities for education. If you have a civil rights museum or even a human rights museum in your community, protect it, fund it, participate with it, make sure truth remains alive. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. Let me see some of these comments. Greatly appreciate everyone for joining the conversation, as always. All right. Okay. Yep. Tachi, I think this is Sean Dragon. What is the training these cops receive to lie instantly upon firing their guns? They all follow the same protocol, so it must be taught protocol in every department. Well, it definitely seems to be part of the culture, doesn't it? And Knuckle Dragon, frightened, trigger-happy people like that should be psychologically screened and not allowed to become cops. Agreed. And Prager U, Melissa Snyder. So are they going to allow liberal parents opt their kids out of this garbage? There you go. That'd be, I guess, equitable, which would make you woke. So no, they're not. All right, hell of a thing. So the feds target a black man on his porch having a cigarette during Trump's DC federal government takeover crackdown. Put it up for a mass. All right. So this is an interesting dynamic, really within the first hours of Trump taking over Washington, D.C. through this power grab and this very unknown and rarely used law. A man was smoking a cigarette, and this happened.
You got your ID on you, chick?
No, I live right here.
Okay, cool.
It's a cigarette.
All right. How's it, man?
Did y'all get a call or something right here?
No, so we're doing checks, keeping everybody safe down here, right? Have you heard of the federal surge that Donald Trump's putting out?
No.
Right. You don't follow like
No.
Code 3, anything like that people are putting up? What's up? All right, so yeah, Trump's got all federal agencies kind of coming together for 7 days and going out, trying to stop the violent crime, all kind of stuff. So we're out here contacting people, talking to them, right? Quality of life offenses, smoking, drinking in public, right? Can't happen outside. So we're just out here trying to inform people and educate people. It's not like we're trying to just go grab people and ruin someone's life. over a joint or something like that, all right?
I only eggs because when you walked up at the moment you walked up, you only had eggs. Meat.
Yeah, well, it smelled like the odor of marijuana, burnt marijuana in the air, right? And you're the only guy that had something lit in your hand, and I didn't flashlight you, so I didn't realize it was just a cigarette. So that's on me. I appreciate you understanding.
They're cracking down on crime by walking up to your property, your porch, which is still your protected property, and demanding your ID because somehow you're breaking the law and that's what they are out to enforce. It's insanity. It's a police state. And this happened within the first few hours of the technical federal takeover. Put it up, full mass. Here we go. First hours of Trump and his administration's Washington, D.C. takeover. A man was targeted on his own porch for smoking a cigarette. It appears the officer was trying to determine whether the man was smoking a cigarette or marijuana. In the days since the takeover began, hundreds of federal agents and National Guard troops have been patrolling the Capitol. Quote, tell your boys everybody's out from the FBI to the police, the agent says. Quote, so do your thing. Let them know. Don't be smoking outside. Don't be drinking outside. End quote. Wait. So if you have a beer and you want to sit on your porch and drink your beer, the court has determined that that is still your home property, that you are able to sit on your porch and have a drink. Even if your city has a law against public intoxication. If you are in your home or immediately outside of your home, on let's say your porch, you are still protected. It's still your home. Now they're saying, well, under this rule, whatever rule they're making up, you no longer have that, right? You see, it seems small, but it's actually huge. This is a mountain, not a molehill. This mountain is saying, we're going to make up the rules as we go. We're not going to concern ourselves with statute. We're not concerning ourselves with the precedent of the court. We are going to concern ourselves with what Trump told us to do. And it always starts in small ways, and then it increases over time. There's more. White House press secretary, a child named Levitt, confirmed that roughly 850 officers and agents were dispatched across the city on August 11th and made 23 arrests for a range of crimes, including homicide, firearm offenses, stalking, DUI, and fare evasion. Those are people that don't have money to get on the bus or train, okay? Department of Defense. The official told NBC News that the National Guard is charged with security, crowd management, perimeter control, and communication support for the city's law enforcement. Guard members will not be arresting, searching, or performing, quote, direct law enforcement, and in most cases won't be carrying firearms, according to the official. How is it that they are charged with security but not in charge of security? They're charged with security, but they can't make arrests. They won't be engaged in real police work, but they're in charge of security. The fact they have to measure their words in such a way should raise a red flag immediately. They have to measure their words because we have statutory law and we have Supreme Court precedent that would bar the National Guard from engaging in such action. So what they're doing is telling you the narrative that fits the paradigm of law and court ruling, but the actual activity of the National Guard is in fact in violation of the essence of those rules. And they know this. There's more. Federal and state data revealed that violent offenses in the city have seen double-digit decreases. Metropolitan Police Department statistics show 26% drop in violent crimes this year so far compared to the same period last year. The reason I bring that to your attention is because Donald Trump attempted to make the argument that, oh, we're doing this because it's just so violent. Well, the truth is you have double-digit drops in crimes across the spectrum. So he can no longer make that argument successfully. He simply wanted a takeover. A recent Department of Justice report shows that violent crime was actually down 35% since 2023, returning to the previous trend of decrease in crime that puts the district's violent crime at a rate lowest in 30 years. Black people on social media have been speaking out online regarding the takeover. William Goldsboro said, remember when us black folks were saying MAGA was going to get to us via the 14th Amendment and use immigrants to do it. But y'all said we were fear-mongering. Trump is taking over a black city with plans to come up the road to Baltimore. You were stupid on November 5th. Another user writes, has anyone noticed that Trump thinks that only cities with black female mayors need to be taken over by the federal government? The cities that he has taken over have lower crime rates than they have had in years, but they have to be taken over? Has anyone noticed the racism? TikTok user and guest of the show, our dear sister, Reese Colbert, reminded social media users that this is no coincidence to bring the military into a city with a large black population. Quote, for anybody to believe that Donald Trump coming in with the military is a solution, and for anybody to think, even after all that we've seen from this administration, that is only going to impact so-called bad ones is irrational. And that's correct. I ask this question damn near every day now. Does it still feel like a democracy to you? Does it still feel like a democracy to you? Federal government takeover of a city? I thought Republicans believed in smaller government, less governmental intrusion, allowing the local people to do it the local way. I thought you cared about the decrease in crime, what works work. I thought you gave a damn about the authority of the voter to elect their representatives themselves. Nobody elected the federal government to be in charge in DC. Nobody elected Donald Trump to be their de facto mayor. He's doing this as a practice run for expansion. That is my opinion. Now, we can stop this. You can stop this. Republicans who continue to go along with it, stop. He's not only destroying the fabric of the nation, he's destroying your party, but he's also destroying your soul. For those of you who believe you have one. If you go along with this madness, the judgment of history would not be kind to you. All right, dear brother, thoughts?
You know, I think it's interesting that the gentleman in that video even knew what the smell of marijuana was. Maybe somebody should check his vehicle. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. I also think it is scientifically proven that if you have a beer out on your porch, it just makes it taste better. At least that's been my experience. I've even heard that having a cigarette with a beer makes it taste better. I don't know. These are just rumors. Yeah, I mean, I think this is all just, like you said, it's in an effort to expand. I think he's already mentioned that he wants to potentially expand into cities like Los Angeles, where I live, and as well as Chicago, and ones that are ran by black female mayors. And so it's absolutely horrific to see. And I think that there are a lot of people, especially in red states, who their entire impression of big cities is completely fed to them by the right-wing media and the algorithms that they are in. And they know in the White House and with the Trump administration that if they paint these cities in a particular way, the only information that their constituents are ever going to get is going to be the information they give them. And this is a great way to continuously divide us and to make it seem like there's absolute mayhem going on. What comes to mind is that Onion article where it says conservative man proudly frightened of everything. And I think that's what they're playing into, and I think they're doing a great job of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, well said. All right, we'll bring you updates, guaranteed to be some. All right, that's something for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
He's not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No,
okay.
He's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you
can't tie
slavery, let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery?
Wait a second.
Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and who was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history. Okay. In the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh no, this is all because white people bad.
I don't.
And it's totally partisan.
We don't. First of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. And if everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Excuse me.
Trying to give you a lesson in history. Put it up full mass. Ironic. Jillian Michaels goes full Karen, defending white people's role in slavery. According to Mediaite, the fitness influencer and Trump defender stunned CNN anchor Abby Phillip with her argument about white people and slavery during a heated exchange on Trump's push to review history in museums. Trump has spent years defending Confederate monuments and pushing against problematic aspects of U.S. history, including the widely mocked purges of information deemed to be DEI related. Most recently, he's been leaning on Smithsonian museums to review and revise their content to reflect Trump's views. So Michaels leaped to shield the white race from shouldering all of the blame and then lashed out at Phillip by claiming she racialized the argument. Producers know. All right. So this woman is raising a black child she adopted from Haiti, by the way. So here it is. Slaveholding, while extremely profitable, was virtually the only way to become truly prosperous in the South. That very profitability proved a challenge for the South because as the price of slaves increased, the percentage of white families who owned slaves decreased. In 1840, about a third of white families owned at least one slave. By 1860, about a fourth did. Those are facts. White people in the South who did not own slaves were deeply implicated in the system. With large numbers of non-slave holders hiring enslaved workers, trading with plantation owners, acting as bankers or insurers, and aiding the slave trade. Non-slave holders could sustain quite respectable family farms, gain respect as ministers or lawyers, or run shops in towns, but they could not attain the heights of their slave-holding neighbors. Of the many myths told about American slavery, one of the biggest is that it was an archaic practice that only enriched a small number of men. The argument has often been used to diminish the scale of slavery, reducing it to a crime committed by a few Southern planters, one that did not touch the rest of the United States. Slavery, the argument goes, was an inefficient system, and the labor of the enslaved was considered less productive than that of a free worker being paid a wage. The use of enslaved labor has been presented as pre-modern, a practice that had no ties to the capitalism that allowed America to become and remain the leading global economy. But as with so many stories about slavery, this too is untrue. Slavery, particularly the cotton slavery that existed from the end of the 18th century to the beginning of the Civil War, was a thoroughly modern business, one that was continuously changing, transforming to maximize profits. The bodies of the enslaved served as America's largest financial asset, and they were forced to maintain America's most exported commodity. In 60 years, from 1801 to 1862, the amount of cotton picked daily by an enslaved person increased 400%. The profits from cotton propelled the U.S. into a position as one of the leading economies in the world and made the South its most prosperous region. The ownership of enslaved people increased wealth for Southern planters so much that by the dawn of the Civil War, the Mississippi River Valley had more millionaires per capita than any other region. Slavery being enabled by members of the government. Of the 55 delegates to the Constitutional Convention, 25 owned slaves. The framers of the Constitution believed that concessions on slavery were the price for the support of Southern delegates for a strong central government. They were convinced that if the Constitution restricted the slave trade, South Carolina and Georgia would refuse to join the Union. But by sidestepping the slavery issue, the framers left the seeds for future conflict. The word slave does not appear in the Constitution. This is true. Framers consciously avoided the word, recognizing that it would sully the document. Nevertheless, slavery received important protections in the Constitution. For example, the notorious 3/5 clause, which counted 3/5 of a state's slave population in apportioning representation, gave the South extra representation in the House of Representatives and extra votes in the Electoral College. There is more. When we say the Electoral College is a slave era dynamic, this is what we're talking about. In order for the South to gain more power in the federal government, the Constitution allowed Southerners to count slaves under the 3/5 compromise so they could have more power in their Electoral College count or mass per state and in their congressional representation. All of that additional representation came on the back of Black folk who had no rights. They had no rights under that Constitution. They could be murdered, sexually abused, molested with approval from the United States government. Understand what slavery actually is, and understand what people are doing when they try to whitewash it. Slavery was human trafficking. Slavery was also human sex trafficking. Period. Now, anytime someone tries to contextualize slavery as some positive or that the country was not implicit, understand what they said was legal to do. It was legal to traffic human bodies. It was legal to sexually abuse those same human bodies. it was legal to physically torture those human bodies, and it was legal to murder them. There's more. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson would have lost the election of 1800 if not for the 3/5 compromise. I'm helping you see how big a deal slavery actually was. The Constitution also prohibited Congress from outlawing the Atlantic slave trade for 20 years. They couldn't even make it statutorily illegal. A fugitive slave clause required the return of runaway slaves to their owners. The Constitution gave the federal government the power to put down domestic rebellions, including slave insurrection. That means murder them just because they want freedom. The law got so extreme that if you happen to find someone or come across someone who was a fugitive slave, meaning they were seeking and had obtained their freedom, if you did not turn them in, you then were under a similar penalty yourself. That is how they enforced it. There's more. From the founding of the United States until long after the Civil War, hundreds of the elected leaders writing the nation's laws were current or former slave owners themselves. More than 1,800 people who served in the U.S. Congress in the 18th, 19th, and even 20th centuries owned human beings at some point in their lives. That's according to a Washington Post investigation of census and other historical records. So, in all due respect, Ms. Michael, slavery was a big deal. More than 2% of folk had them. And yes, it did set up the American economy to be the prosperous global engine it is today. Those are your facts. All right, dear brother, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jillian should maybe put down the barbell and maybe pick up a book for just a second. I don't know if that'll do much good compared to her little printed out list of factoids that these guys like to use whenever they come on and start spewing this rhetoric on national television. It's incredibly frustrating to listen to. Also, this is the same group that like 5 years ago was complaining about safe spaces and complaining about participation trophies. But how fragile do you have to be to not be able to look back at American history in like an honest and sober way and actually take accountability? It's not about guilt. It's not about going white person bad, as she says later in the interview. I think it's about atonement and understanding what actually went down, because the more I learn about it, there's always something new to learn. And these folks are not interested in the truth. They're interested in whatever rhetoric they can use to protect themselves from bad feelings. So I understand why Jillian Michaels works out so much, because I would too if my brain was made of vanilla pudding.
Right. Very well said and probably factually.
With all due respect.
That's right, all due respect. All right, we got more on the other side. Indisputable stick and stay.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. Let me read some of these beautiful comments. I greatly appreciate everyone for joining the convo. Kimmy_Kutu, if he doesn't know the difference between cigarette smoke and weed, he's in the wrong profession. Shaking my head. Yeah. Wendy Scoop, a cigarette doesn't smell like marijuana. LOL. You need to check all that cop drug arrests, and all of them need to get a free retrial. Yeah. T Bobo, I think, 7051. Debating with racist people about something like slavery is a waste of time. It truly is. I think people were kind of shocked that the position was so hardcore racist. Yeah. And there you go. So Miss C. Beasley, 6194, in 1860, the economic value of enslaved people in the United States estimated between $3 billion and $4 billion. Was considered the largest single financial asset in the entire U.S. economy. That's correct. And it supported other industries involved in the transportation, the insuring, and the contracting of the slave trade. So it also supported all these other auxiliary or adjacent industries in the process of that. So yeah, a whole lot of money. All right, we got more on the other side. Indisputable. Stick and stay.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
In a media landscape poisoned by corporate influence, only one show stands apart from the rest, The Young Turks. As the longest-running daily news show on the internet, The Young Turks is an impactful voice of unfiltered truth, one you can trust to deliver the daily news with authenticity and honesty. For nearly 2 decades, TYT has been breaking the mold of media. We're not here to echo the powerful or the elite, we're here to challenge them. Our mission is to give you accurate news, fight the establishment, and cover stories that mainstream media keeps you in the dark about, which matter to your everyday life. We've remained a leader in online news because of our established credibility with an engaged audience looking for alternative media that represents the real concerns of everyday Americans. Listen to The Young Turks, a news show that only answers to you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
How do you know if you're a populist? Easy. Do you work for the donor class? You don't? Great, you're a populist. Okay, so the establishment takes money from the donors and serves the donors. Mainstream media takes money from advertisers, and they are giant corporations themselves, and they work for themselves, and they work for the powerful. If you care about the average person, and you want the average person to have better health care, better wages, a better life, and you hate corruption, congrats, you're a populist.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed, so I won't stop. You won't stop either. All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. A lot on the agenda still. Okay, Buffalo Wild Wings. The server forces a teen girl to prove her gender. Here it is.
So our client Jerica, she was at Buffalo Wild Wings with her friend and they were just enjoying dinner. And Jerica had to use the bathroom, so she went to use the women's room as she always does. And her waitress came in, banged on the stall door, accused her of being a man or a boy in the women's room, forced her out of the stall, and eventually made her unzip her hoodie to show that she has breasts. She was wearing a shirt, but that she wasn't allowed to leave the bathroom until that happened. It's really upsetting. It should never happen to anyone. Our client's only 18 years old. She's still in high school.
This wasn't the first time something like this happened, but this is like the worst time. Because other people, like, they just say, like, this is a girl's restroom, and they just go on about their day. But this one, like, she kept it going. She was, like, mad screaming. Like, she made me feel, like, very uncomfortable. Like, now, like, after that, like, I just don't like going in public bathrooms. Like, I just hold it in.
Pitiful mass. It's a damn shame, isn't it? A Buffalo Wild Wings server forces a teenage girl to prove her gender. The teen's lawyer broke down what happened. I'm taking you to Minnesota. Minnesota, an 18-year-old named Garika Mudra has filed a charge of discrimination against a Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant, alleging a server followed her into the women's restroom and demanded she, quote, prove she was a girl.
The young Miss Mudra, 18, went to dinner in April with a friend in Owatonna, about an hour south of Minneapolis. When she went to the restroom, a server followed her inside and banged on the stall door while saying, quote, "This is a women's restroom. The man needs to get out of here," end quote. That's according to Gender Justice, Minnesota gender equality organization that filed the charge on Mudra's behalf. Mudra, 18, went to dinner, and she said she felt she had to prove to the server that she is in fact a woman. So she unzipped her hoodie to show she has breasts. The server did not say anything in response, but left the restroom. Mudra said, quote, "She made me feel very uncomfortable," Mudra said. "After that, I just don't like going in public bathrooms. I just hold it in. I want to be able to use the bathroom in peace." Inspire Brands, which represents Buffalo Wild Wings, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Gender Justice filed the charge of discrimination with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, arguing that what happened to Mudra violates the state's Human Rights Act, which protects people from discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation, among other protected statutes. Sarah Jane Baldwin, senior staff attorney at Gender Justice, said at a news conference Tuesday that even though Mudra isn't trans, the server's actions, quote, were based on assumptions that she made about Mudra, and that Minnesota's law protects against discrimination based on stereotypes or assumptions about protected characteristics like gender identity. Gender Justice said Mudra's experience, quote, reflects a broader climate of fear and suspicion aimed to anyone who doesn't conform to narrow expectation of what girls and women should look like. That suspicion has been driven largely by the wave of state legislation targeting trans people, particularly their access to school sports and bathrooms that align with their gender identities, though Minnesota has not enacted such legislation yet. So we've seen this fear demonstrated with many cisgender female athletes that have had their gender questioned on the international stage, having to endure various tests to prove their de facto gender. All right, so, while you have some civil statutes here, it sounds criminal to me for anyone to go into a bathroom. I want you to imagine a man going into a bathroom. There's a woman in the stall banging on the stall, saying, "You have to get out. Only women allowed in here." And then saying, "Prove you are a woman." And that individual who is cornered in that space having to show by revealing themselves, they have to prove to this staffer that they are in fact a woman. Public accommodations is a civil law that basically says, if you have something that the public can come to, you got to make sure you treat everybody the same way. Okay, public accommodation. That's a violation of that federal rule. You got many state rules. They are violated. But it seems that this would be also a violation of law to do something like this to another human being. You have an 18-year-old girl whose life has probably changed forever because of the experience. This is an unforced error. It didn't have to happen. Nobody should police this, but all of a sudden, here we go. Dear brother, thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this is against the law. It's also incredibly creepy. And I think it is the logical conclusion of a lot of anti-trans laws and anti-trans rhetoric that is incredibly popular on the right now as they try to come up with a new out-group. I think if the roles were reversed, this would seem even creepier. And yeah, I mean, it's absolutely horrible what this girl went through. I mean, the fact that she had to eat a Buffalo Wild Wings is bad enough. I've had their wings and they're really not that great. So I wish her the best on multiple fronts.
There you go. Yeah, well said. All right. Update. Ex-cop gets 80 years. 80 years. Why? Well, he shot at a Dems home. Put it up full mass. Ex-GOP candidate gets 80 years for shooting at a Dems home, not a cop. An unsuccessful House candidate from New Mexico now has 80 years in prison. Solomon Pena was found guilty of all charges relating to the drive-by shooting and targeting of the homes and offices of state Democratic officials. We brought you this when it first happened. He now has 80 years. Unsuccessful New Mexico state House candidate, was sentenced to 80 years in prison on Wednesday, quote, for orchestrating a politically motivated shooting and plotting to murder witnesses to obstruct justice, the Justice Department announced. Solomon Pena, who ran for the House District 14 seat in 2022, was convicted of 13 charges. These included conspiracy, firearms charges, 4 counts of intimidation, and interference with federally protected activities, that's probably witness tampering, per a Department of Justice statement Wednesday. I'm going to give you the background. So he ran, he lost. But after he lost the election, he falsely claimed the election was rigged. Uh-oh. And he began to pressure members of the County Board of Commission. Hey, the election was rigged. He recruited accomplices like Hosea Trujillo and Demetrio to carry out the shootings after the commissioners refused his demand, the DOJ said. Quote, following his arrest, Pena attempted to have them both murdered to prevent them from testifying about the hit, offering fellow inmates money and a vehicle in exchange for their deaths. Jose previously pleaded guilty to conspiracy, interference with federally protected activities, and other charges included firearm offenses, and was sentenced to 37 months in prison, according to the DOJ. The court in Albuquerque ordered Pena to pay restitution and a $250,000 fine. Yeah, so this is a horrible criminal. He would have made a horrible politician. So this individual literally took the same line as Trump. He did, all right? And he not only took the same line as Trump, he then recruited individuals who would do his dirty work, kind of like Trump has done. But in this case, it didn't work. But if he were president of the United States, the 2 individuals who pleaded guilty, or the 2 individuals who also got time, they would have probably been the Department of Defense secretary and also your FBI director. All right, thoughts here?
I mean, I think he is also a terrorist in addition to being an incredibly sore loser. And when you have this cycle, this idea of a rigged election, it's on a meta level, it undermines the entire democratic process. You can't have a functioning democracy if you're concerned that the person who loses might try to kill you or someone else. It is a complete, it goes against everything that these so-called patriots claim to believe in. It also shows that when people talk about how Trump is just saying nonsense all the time, that might be true for a lot of people, but it's not true for all of them. And the words that are spoken from the highest office in the land have an effect on people, and they are watching the president and they're modeling their behavior after him. So I'm glad to see this guy go away, but I worry with where we're at right now in this nation that this isn't going to keep happening over and over again.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, speaking of terrorists, we have an update. Trump's Bureau of Labor Statistics nominee was, in fact, a Jan 6 terrorist himself. And that's my opinion about the whole thing. Okay, so here it is.
Tell us about the president's new pick for BLS.
Had contributed to the Project 2025, which was, of course, that roadmap for really remaking the federal government. Someone who is a chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, which is a very conservative think tank. This is someone clearly with a political bent in economics.
This is supposed to be a non-political job, and I was told by multiple sources, and the president himself essentially hinted at this, that he wanted someone with a political bent.
Yeah, someone who's going to tell him what he wants to hear, he basically said.
Unfortunately, your viewers do need to know about this person. This is someone who is picked, who's been roundly criticized by every single conservative economist that I know, people from basically every conservative think tank, almost every conservative think tank in DC, because he's an extreme partisan. He is not someone who has any technical understanding of these data, not someone with any management experience.
Most people, I think in both parties, agree there's something wrong with the methodology. The data collection is not what is allowing them to get accurate data. And we can argue about the person. Isn't the goal here for this new person in the office to fix the way we collect the data so that we're not constantly revising these numbers? To me, you want trusted data? We haven't had trusted data in years because we keep revising.
The fact that he fired someone because he didn't like the numbers.
I mean, this is,
I don't know that he's not.
But this is literally the DEI, anti-DEI administration claiming that everybody, person of color, is not qualified. And then they put this guy in who economists are saying he's not even reading charts and graphs properly. What happened to qualifications?
Qualification. Well, here's his qualification. Put it up full mass. He was there on that fateful day. The day that Donald Trump first attempted to overthrow the United States democracy. There he is, right there. Violence and intimidation in order to affect a political outcome is called terrorism. In an update, E.J. Antony, Trump's pick to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics, was among the crowd outside of the Capitol January 6, 2021, with the White House saying he was a bystander. He actually just wandered over there after seeing the coverage on the news. That's the official line from the White House. He meandered there. He was in the vicinity. He was in an approximate. How could he not do this? He was curious. He appears in numerous videos, however, seeming a little more than curious. Many videos posted on social media of the crowd on the Capitol grounds. The footage shows that the new Bureau of Labor Statistics nominee, approximately an hour after the mob removed police barricades, the nominee is there. The footage appears to show him leaving the grounds as people enter the Capitol and not entering the building, however, but he is on the west side of the Capitol in one video archived from the social media website Parler, and appears in surveillance footage posted online by the Republican-led Committee on House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight. Parler video, which was also archived by ProPublica, shows Antony walking away from the crowd on the west side of the Capitol grounds. Tear gas was in the air, and conservative radio host Alex Jones can be heard speaking over a megaphone. At that time, police were struggling to hold off the mob from taking over the inauguration platform. The crowd has surrounded the building, but not yet entered the Capitol. Other footage does show him on the east side of the Capitol building, walking south, away from the building. Reached by NBC News on Tuesday, he declined to comment A White House official said Wednesday that he was in Washington on Jan 6 for in-person meetings with his then employer at an office block at an office blocks away from the Capitol, and that he did not cross any barricades or participate in any demonstrations. The footage does not show him crossing the barricades or demonstrating. Now, why would crossing the barricades be a big deal? You all said that wasn't illegal anyway. That was patriotism. So why make the distinction? There's more. As a reminder, the Justice Department's investigation into the Jan 6 attack was the largest in its history, with prosecutors going through video evidence to identify and charge participants. The department mostly focused on charging individuals who entered the Capitol building or engaged in aggravating behavior outside. On his first day in office, Trump ended the investigation into the terrorist attack, pardoned everybody, roughly 1,500 Capitol defendants, and commuted the sentences of others. Yeah, he still committed trespassing, no matter what. We'll see if more video comes out. This is how they're selecting the high-ranking appointees now. If you somehow were a participant of Jan 6, you got a job. What say you?
Yeah, they're really bringing in their best here. I mean, who needs to know how to read charts or graphs when you're dealing in a job about statistics? Maybe those charts and graphs are woke, who knows? And the American people need to be protected from them. That would be my guess. Also, I'm pretty sure this guy was just in the news for also sitting in front of a Nazi warship, the Bismarck, and he's sort of proudly smiling in front of it. So, that and the fact that he looks like Screech from Saved by the Bell, all of these things kind of add up to maybe him not being the best appointee. And it also goes to show that this administration was never taking January 6th seriously. I don't think they ever will. I think a lot of their voters did, and they were very successful at reframing that in their minds. And now they're kind of trying to do this thing where, he was just there. He saw a picnic going on and just wanted to get curious and see what kind of food they had. And, he was just there innocently and left his office in the middle of the day to go try to overturn a democratic process. So yeah, good luck to him. I hope he learns how to read numbers.
There you go. He won't. All right. Always good to have you on the program, dear brother. Tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
You can check out my videos over at Rebel HQ. You can also check me out on my Substack, substack.com/Elliott Morgan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, my friend, for all you do. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.